Hello, everybody. Good afternoon from Dussen in the Netherlands. I'm Nicholas from idyn. With me on the call is Richard. This is the final training session we're hosting today on one of our latest additions to our portfolio, the Business Central app called ApproveIT 365, a solution that already has been taken on board by a number of partners by now, because it's a proven added value. Richard will tell you all about it in a moment. If you have questions, you can enter them in the questions tab. I'll collect them and then we'll answer them after the call. You will be sent a recording of the session automatically after we close. And please, if you could be so kind to share your feedback on this training session through the brief questionnaire you'll see pop up after this one ends. With that, I'd like to hand over to Richard, who will give you an in-depth overview of the ApproveIT 365 app.
Okay, so I'll share my screen. So welcome to the last session of today, for the training session for ApproveIT. In this session, I will go over the ApproveIT solution, the total solution with the basic flow and somewhat more advanced flow, which uses some new configuration options. ApproveIT, of course, is our solution for digital signing of documents, currently focusing on sales documents, but ultimately not limited to that, to send out your quotes, your orders, to sign by customers and get them back in Business Central to keep your administration central in your ERP. We will be discussing the release of the previous week, 22.1, where we added mostly some advanced configuration options to allow for multiple tab sets, and with tab sets we mean the DocuSign tabs, where we can require the customer to fill in some data like signature or name or the job title or company. We also have some additional configuration for email text, so the subject and the body of the email text, where we can specify it for different reports and different languages. And additionally, there are some minor improvements, like in the recipient lookup on the page where we select the signers. We can now also look up the contacts for the bill to customer number, or for the bill to customer. In the first release, we had, of course, our recipients page, where we selected by default the at that moment the sell to contact, email and name. If there was no contact present on the document, we would take the default email for the customer and the default name for the customer. And if you want to modify the email address, you had to manually input that data. So currently we have simply added an assist edit on the email field to allow for a contact lookup, where you can select an existing contact. You can still manually add an email address and name, so that's still possible. However, in most of the time, we will probably handle existing contacts anyway, so this way you can easily look it up. I will show you that in a moment when we go to through our basic process flow. So I will go over the flow, how we would do it with the minimal setup. And after that, I will start a little bit of more advanced flow. It's still quite easy to do, but that uses some additional setup as well. So to go over the basic process first, the way we have set it up is we have some options available on the sales quote and sales order where we can start a ApproveIT flow. And when starting that, we need to select who needs to sign the document. The document will also be generated and sent to DocuSign, including the signer, who will also get an email notification to sign the document in DocuSign. In Business Central, we also have the status for ApproveIT. So at that moment, it will be set to send. We also have some additional info that will be filled in. The Business Central user, for instance, that has sent the document and when it was sent. Ultimately, the customer needs to sign the document, and then we can get it back and get and retrieve the latest status. And when the document is completely signed, it will be set to completed, and we will also retrieve the signed document back in Business Central as an attachment. So let's go to the Business Central client, and here we can simply start, for instance, from the quotes. I've prepared some quotes that still need to be sent. So here we can see that we have some that are not handled yet by ApproveIT. So let's take this one. So simple document with a couple of lines. We can see some additional fields over here, currently all empty. And when we start the flow, we have the ApproveIT menu, which is now included in the promoted page actions, where we can simply start the flow. Report was generated, and we have the default contact that's used on the document, on the sales document from the bill to customer. However, if we want to change that, we can we can select if LastPass isn't. So as I said, we have the assist edit where we can choose the contact or change the contact or add a contact. In this case, this was the default on the customer. We could change that to Mindy, and then we have that email address and the contact name as well. For now, I will change it back to this one because that's linked to an internal email address. For now, we keep it at keep the basic flow, so we select only one signer and ignore the DocuSign tabs field for now. So simply press OK. We now get a notification that the document was sent to DocuSign, and we can see that it was sent, that it was sent, well, this minute, and it was sent by me. So now the recipient should get an email, and here it is. We click review. And we have our sales quote in the layout that was generated in Business Central. And we have the sign here tab, which we can use. So I will simply sign it. In this case, it will still ask me for the full name and initials. If I need to change that here, of course, that is possible. And that's all there is to do in this case for the signer. There are no additional fields, so you also don't see any next steps. You can simply finish the document, and now for the customer, the DocuSign process is completed. Of course, we want to get the status and the signed document back in Business Central. We have a job queue entry that can be executed, so we get the status automatically. However, in this case, for the training, I will choose to get the status manually. And we can see that it is completed, and now we can also see that it was when it was completed. And since the document was completed, we can also see that the signed document is visible in the attached documents. And you can see that that includes the signature. So that is the basic flow. We can also, of course, check the log to see the steps, but ultimately we can see that the document was created, it was sent, it was delivered, and it was completed. And we got a copy back in Business Central. With the advanced flow, we still have the same steps, of course, as the basic flow. However, we can set up some more fields to make sure that we get more data from the customer with, for instance, the tab sets. It is also easier to set multiple signers. We could already set multiple signers. However, previously they would get the same anchor position for their signature, so they would overlap. Now we can assign different tabs as well. And of course, we can set multiple email texts, so subject and bodies based on the report and the language used for the customer or on the sales document. So if we go back to the client, we will simply use the next available sales quote. Once again, we will start it as we would in the basic flow. In this case, I will have to edit it because I only have also email addresses. So now we will assign DocuSign tabs. I will go over the configuration after we finish this flow. So I want, for instance, want to have the sales quote tab set. I will also include an internal recipient, so we don't really differentiate between internal and external. However, we have another person that needs to sign, and I also have a tab set available for the internal signer. So now it will be sent to two people who are both signers, so they will get them in order. So we have the first signer, that person needs to complete the process, and after that person completes it, the second signer will get the document to sign. So once again, we will simply send it. And once again, we can see that the notification for that. And then we will get our email. So now we can see a couple of things. First of all, we have multiple tabs available. If we let DocuSign show us where to start, we can simply click Start. And you can see that we have multiple tabs like initials, the signature, that's the same signature box that we had previously. We have the name, that's a read-only tab. So that's based if we sign and we adopt a signature, we have to fill in the full name. That's the same name that's used in the full name here. We have the job title. That's a field that we can edit. And we have the sign date as well, once again, read only. That will be automatically filled in when the document is opened. However, if it's signed on a different day, then it will also be modified to the date that the document was actually signed. Now, an interesting part here is that once again, we have an initial, and we will see this in the configuration, but this is the same tab as we set over here. But due to the way that we set the anchor, it will show up for every anchor string that we have available. And since that same anchor string is also available on the third page, we also have the initials over there. So still pretty much same flow. However, of course, there were some more steps for the signer. However, we had two signers. And because the first one finished, we get an email for the second signer. And I've included a different tab set, which only contain initials on a different place. And once again, since we use the same anchor string, it will show up on each page. So here I don't need to set the signature, I just have defined initials on each page. And once again, we're finished. Since we had two signers and both people have signed the document, the document is now considered completed. So if I get back the status, we see that it's completed. And once again, we have our attachment. And this is also the moment that that both signers or all signers get an email notification with the completed document from both sides. And that's the same document that we have over here, where we can see the complete signed document. So while I mentioned that it is an advanced flow, still the steps are easy to follow. And with the help of DocuSign, we can also guide our customers through what is expected from them to fill in. We haven't necessarily seen the email subject and body. Well, we actually have seen it, but didn't really recognize that it is a setting that we already did. But I will go over the configuration right now. So in the ApproveIT setup card page, we have added a configuration menu. We previously already had the report anchors and the anchor translations. And now we added the DocuSign tab sets and report email setup. With the DocuSign tab sets, we can, of course, define sets. And in those sets, we can define which tabs we want to set and which tab types we want to set. And there, for each tab, we can decide how to position that tab in the document. For instance, we have the Sign Here tab, that's the signature. And in this example, we see that the positioning is based on an anchor string. That anchor string is total. And from there, we decide how to position it using X and Y values, in this case in pixels. However, we also have other units available. We also have a fixed positioning where it's with anchors, we have relative positioning based from the anchor string, where the anchor string is considered the starting point. And with fixed positioning, we can set some tabs based on the positioning on the complete document. Now, what we'll actually see it in a moment. But as you can see, we don't actually define over here on which page the tabs are set. Well, technically there is an option for that. However, in most cases, we don't know how many pages will be included in the document. That can be dynamic because we have more content for one sales document than in the other. So we can have multiple pages where we don't know when we send it to DocuSign how many pages there are. Instead of that, we simply have that anchor string, and each time that anchor string is found, we will position that tab over there, or DocuSign will assign that. And in our configuration, we will see in a moment how that's set up for those initials that we just saw for those 3 pages. As we saw, this also makes it easier to assign multiple signers with different tab sets to allow for specific positioning for that signer to sign. And we can also decide what kind of tabs need to be included for that signer. So if we open that, let's go to the setup first. And here we have the configuration, and we can see the DocuSign tab sets. So we use that sales quote advanced, and here we can open the lines. We can actually already see how many tabs are used in this overview. And here we can see what is included. So here we can see we had the signature tab. Here we can see the total list of available tab types. We had the full name, we had the job title, and we had the date of the signature, and we had the initials. And you can see that for the first 4 tabs, we used the same anchor or the same anchor string. And for the initials, we use a different anchor string. And this is also the anchor string that was available on each page, causing the initials to appear on each page relative to that anchor string 30 pixels below that text. Here you can see that we have the anchor units. That's something that we also had before, of course. Default is pixels. However, if you want to use different measure units, of course, that can be done. And here you have the X and Y positions, where in the case of the anchor, that's the X and Y offset. And in the case of the fixed position, that's the absolute position. Here you can also see that with that positioning, we can simply go in the negative to make sure that we align the tabs more to the left. So here we have the signed and approved. So let me open that document once again. Let's see if we can set it side to side. That's the wrong one, of course. So here we can see, if we magnify this a bit, that we have the sign here tab. So this was the anchor text, signed and approved. And we went with the X -70, so to the left, and with Y 35, so to below the signed and approved anchor string. And you can see that for the full name, title, and date signed, we use the same X position to make sure that this is all aligned in the same way. And with Y, of course, we can see different values to make sure that the text doesn't overlap. And with the initials, of course, that 30, we can also see that was this one. And the other initials that we see that was done with this tab set, that simply contains one tab, once again, initials here. However, instead of just the Y on 30, we also use the X position for 50 to make sure that's more to the right. But it uses the same anchor string. Now we also have the report email setup that is available. So previously we only had one default text in our ApproveIT setup. That is still there. However, we also have a separate setup where we can define email texts where we can assign a report ID and a language ID. And if that's found, if that combination is found, that text will be used. And if that's not found, we have a fallback to only looking for these records for report ID without the language. And if that can be found, we will check back in the ApproveIT setup. So if we take a look at the configuration, here we once again see that email setup. And here we can see multiple records for the sales quote, one without a language, and for 3 specific languages, since this is the Kronos data set for without a specific country, the English United Kingdom language ID is used for most customers here. And this was also the text that was used in the email text that we just saw. So that's the text that we see over here and the subject that we have over here. If we look, well, here we have a Dutch variant of that. And to make sure that that was actually the one that was used, if we go back to the setup itself, we can see a very generic subject and body text, just to make sure that this wasn't the one that was used. So in this case, since we had a sales document with a customer that used, actually used British or English United Kingdom as a language, this email text was used in our request to DocuSign. In this case, the training was a bit on the short side, since it is set up in such a way that the app can still be used with minimal configuration, and even with extended configuration, the flow itself is still rather simple to follow. So I don't know if there are already any questions. If not, you can send them to the questions tab.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. I can't see any questions yet. So I'd like to close this session right now. If you have any questions afterwards, or you would like more information on pricing, for example, or maybe even a demo for your customers, we can always help with that. Just send your request to sales@idyn.nl. And I'd like to thank you for attending this afternoon. Thank you, Richard. And
yeah, no problem.
Take care, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.